recall. I don't recall. I don't recall. I don't recall. I have no recollection. I don't recall. 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 I have no recollection. I don't recall. 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 I don't remember. I have no recollection. I have no recollection. I don't recall. I can't recall. I do not recall. I don't 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 recall.
The Bush administration sought expanded powers to engage in warrantless searches, warrantless wiretapping, and other unconstitutional forms of surveillance. Now the Obama administration wants to extend its unchecked surveillance to the Internet. My first guest was the Attorney General of the United States under President George W. Bush from 2005 to 2007. Former Attorney General and now Professor Alberto Gonzales joins us. There's a little bit of a time delay between where General Gonzales is and where I am. General, welcome here.
It's good to be with you, Judge.
General, why is it that the government takes the position that it can get inside a person's computer or surveil what they do on the computer without a warrant from a judge just because it needs that information? What about the Constitution?
Well, first, let me clarify your earlier comment about the Bush administration taking unconstitutional measures to gather information about the enemy. The lawyers worked very, very hard to ensure that in protecting America, we did so consistent with the Constitution. And of course, as you know, the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, the touchstone of the Fourth Amendment is reasonableness. In the criminal law context, that is usually satisfied by probable cause and a warrant. But also, as you know, in the area of national security and intelligence, it really becomes more of a balancing test. The legitimate needs of the government and, of course, the privacy interests of the individuals. And our government, when I was the Attorney General, worked very, very hard to ensure the appropriate balance so that we did meet our objectives to protect our country consistent with the requirements of the Constitution.
General, I know of no exception in the Constitution or in the case law for national security that lets the government bypass the Constitution and the Fourth Amendment. But let me ask you this. What is the mindset of the Attorney General and of the Justice Department when the Constitution is an obstacle to the accomplishment of your task? Do you evade and avoid the Constitution? Do you use fancy words in court to claim that you're following the Constitution? Or do you follow it come what may?
You follow it come what may, Judge, of course, that you take an oath of office, and that is your obligation as the Attorney General to ensure that the executive branch acts consistent with the Constitution. And of course, as you know, even in the law enforcement context, from time to time there are abuses, and when that happens, a search might be thrown out, for example. But no question about it, and no exception about it, the obligation of those who work in the government is to follow the Constitution.
But the Patriot Act and other legislation gave groups of FBI agents the right to the power to write their own search warrants called national security letters, and to serve them on financial institutions and to require the financial institutions to turn over information. No judge, no probable cause, no search warrant, just something FBI agents wrote for themselves. How could that be consistent with the Constitution, General?
Well, of course, as you know, an administrative subpoena and a national security letter is much different than a search. Where a search, you go into someone's home, you go into someone's computer. But with respect to administrative subpoena or national security letter, you're going to a third party. And so the level of the expectation of privacy is much different with respect to information that is already in the hands of a third party. And of course, Congress, this was a policy decision.
I want you to listen to former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin on this, whose email was hacked by an individual. Listen to her reaction. Governor Palin, you had a very unfortunate incident during the campaign where somebody hacked into your emails, and the guy was prosecuted and rightfully convicted, and the courts will handle that. Should the government be able to hack into your emails without a search warrant from a judge and on a whim?
Absolutely not. No. And that's an indication, those who would advocate for such a thing, an indication of how far we have strayed from our constitutional rights.
Should the government be able to hack into emails or monitor our surfing the web without a search warrant from a judge, General Gonzales?
Well, but of course, you're asking whether or not the search should be conducted based on a whim. There are requirements. The United States government cannot act based on a whim. And of course, there are additional checks imposed by law. For example, there are reporting requirements about the use of these authorities to the Congress. The IG, the Inspector General of these agencies, they inspect the work of the FBI, for example, and they report to Congress. And so there are checks that exist, and the government is not and should not be acting based on a whim. I agree totally with Governor Palin.
General Gonzales, we appreciate you joining us. Thanks for your time. Even the experts on the front lines of intelligence work draw different conclusions on the issue of surveillance. Wayne Simmons worked in intelligence for 27 years and now defends the war on terror as a commentator and military analyst. Retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer, who worked in military intelligence, has been highly critical of U.S. intelligence efforts preceding 9/11 and even its ongoing efforts in Afghanistan. Welcome to you both. Colonel, to you first. If the government has more power to prosecute the war on terror, and it has asked for that more power, it wants to be able to hook up its cables to Skype and BlackBerry and Facebook without going to a judge and without getting a warrant, without even telling Skype and BlackBerry and Facebook. Is it likely to use that power wisely, or is there a danger here, Colonel?
There's a danger because, you know, I've run a number of black operations over the years, and I've always sought oversight to keep me honest. Anytime you have the ability to do something, the chances are pretty good you're going to do it. And the chances are hugely favorable to doing fishing expeditions. And I dispute the general on his comments relating to the national security letters. There's oversight, but that very oversight cited multiple abuse cases of the national security letters being used for non-terrorism related issues. So the case in point is that right there. The fact is this: unless you have adequate oversight, people will stray, and the very purpose for what you're using that authority for will be abused.
Wayne, we know, you worked in the government for many years, that government will sometimes frequently abuse the powers that it is given. Why should the government be able to look at our computers, observe our surfing the web, without us knowing about it, without the computer server company knowing about it, without a judge authorizing it?
They should not be able to, Judge. You and I have known each other for a while. You know my position on national security, and there is virtually nothing that I find sacred in protecting the lives of Americans and America's national security. However, there should never be a time where the United States has authority to spy on its citizens, and that's what it would be. Without oversight of someone like you, because as your other guest pointed out, and unfortunately I agree, that there will be and have been many abuses of that trust that we give
Wayne,
our
isn't there already in existence software that the government has or is about to have or is experimenting with that would let it spy on its citizens and get to Skype and get to BlackBerry and get to Twitter without even having Skype or BlackBerry or Twitter know about it?
Yeah, Judge, there is, as many of your viewers probably already know, there is stealth technology available. So a lot of this that we are discussing right now is moot. And I would suggest to you that those who are aware of this stealth technology are probably not out there advertising that it is available. Now, the other thing is, I would suggest that we all have to wait until this proposal comes out to see exactly what it is. But without men of honor like you watching over these subpoenas, the possibility for abuse will just explode.
But, Colonel, the people of the United States of America should not rely on people like me to protect their privacy and their constitutional rights. Everybody that works for the government, everybody in the military, a public school janitor up to the president, takes an oath to uphold the Constitution. What is the mindset of people in special ops or black ops or military intelligence or defense intelligence when the Constitution gets in their way? Do they stop and follow the Constitution, or do they evade and avoid it?
Well, it's an ethical dilemma, and the answer is it depends on who it is. Some people come up with ethics and apply them. And when I ran operations, Judge, I had two simple rules. It was called the Ed Bradley rule and the John Doe rule. If I'm doing something, whatever it is, how secret it is or not, if Ed Bradley showed up on my doorstep and had questions for me, could I answer them honestly, with integrity, and be shown to be doing the right thing? Secondly, would John Doe, the taxpayer, paying for my activities, want me to be doing what I'm doing? Would he want his hard-earned money to go what I'm doing?
Got it.
That was my ethical thing, but not everybody has the same set of ethics.
Got it. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I'd like to take a moment to talk about Colonel Schaefer's own clash with the government's control of information. Colonel, your new book, and I'm showing it to the screen here, your new book, Operation Dark Heart, goes into some revealing details about military intelligence operations and errors that it perpetrated. Look at what the government did to your book. The government made you black out large paragraphs and sentences. The government even pulverized, destroyed, they don't burn them anymore today, about 10,000 copies of your book. What happened?
That's right. Well, we went through an approval process. I'm an Army Reserve officer, actually not retired yet, and that process we thought was adequate by the fact we worked on it 8 months. We had a researcher come in, I hired to help make sure everything was in the public sector, and in the end, that apparently wasn't enough, because literally at the 11th hour, and I'm kind of, the Friday the 13th of August, three men in black suits and sunglasses shows up at my publisher saying, you can't publish. And that's when the second look started. And the end result of that is what you see before you right now.
It shouldn't happen in America. You're a hero, Colonel. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Judge.
The government watches you here, and it watches you over there. Over in England, the intrusion in private life has become an art form, and it may be exported here.
Okay, thanks, Chris. It's 4:32. New this morning, a new audio tape from a man claiming to be Osama bin Laden. He expresses concern about global climate change and flooding in Pakistan, saying a relief group should be set up for Muslim victims of natural disasters and wars. Now, if the authenticity is confirmed, this is the first time that we've heard from bin Laden since March. A warning this morning from counterterrorism experts about radicalized Westerners returning home to stage attacks. A new study from George Washington University says it is way too easy for Westerners to travel to terrorist training camps like the ones you see here before returning to stage attacks. Sweden is raising its terror alert this morning. Security officials say that they've detected an increased but not immediate threat of terror attacks against Sweden.
It's 4:33. Children's
It's not about justice, it's not about agenda, it's not about mobilizing people, it's about dialing for corporate dollars. These two parties have sold the U.S. government and the American people to the highest bidders.